The Mishnah here on Daf Yudam and Aleph is very interesting. It's an atypical Mishnah. And the Mishnah speaks about many different categories of halacha that are derived from both Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh. For example, Heter Nidorim, the fact that a Chacham could be Matir and Neder, that means I come in front of the Chacham, I declare that I took this Neder, and if I would have known how difficult it was to observe the Neder, I never would have taken the Neder, which is called Pesach. Or sometimes there's Charot, and he just regrets that he took the Neder. That whole enterprise called Hataras Nedarim is not in the Torah. The Torah speaks about Hafaras Nedarim, that a husband or sometimes a father could be Mephir his wife or his daughter's Neder, but Hataras Nedarim as an entity is Parchin Bi'avir. It's all up in the air. It's conceptual. It's derived from Torah Shebal Peh, nowhere to be found in Torah Shebechsav. If you look into the parsha, you will not find anything more than a slight remez, a little bit of an allusion, which is in the parsha of Lo Yachel Dvaro, and Chazal interpret that to mean Lo Yachel Dvarav al Yidei Atzmo Aval Adei Acherim Yachel Dvaro, which means that a chacham could be matir and ned. That's again what we call Ein Lehem Al Mashi Yismachu. Hilchas Shabbos, again, a very interesting case of many, many complicated halachas. And look in the Torah, you won't find them. Where will you find in the Torah the 39 categories of malach with all their nuances? Chagigos, or for example, Karma Chagigah. Very little in Torah Shebechsav. It's almost all in this Masechet, the Torah Shebal Peh of Chagigah. Ve'ha-me'ilos, also the parsha of Me'ilu Behegdish. Arei Haim, all the above are keharorim hatluyim bisaro. So he has here a mashal with a har, a mountain, and a sarah, just a little hair on the head. Behem mikra muat ve'alachos merubos. So we're going to use the following mashal. The mikra, the amount of verses in the Torah for these three categories is very limited. It's like chut hasara. On the other hand, the halachos are rabos, are manifold. An entire Masechet, I don't have to tell you, it's almost 200 blot on Masechet Shabbos, for example. And that's called a har. So that's called mikra muat v'halachos merubos. Very little and limited in Torah Shebechsav, but vast amount of Torah Shebal Peh. Adinim, which is a reference to Dinei Momenos, the laws of monetary claims, civil law, Veha Avodos, and the various karbonos that are brought in the Beis HaMikdash, and also Taros Vehatumos, Ve'arayos, Yesh Lem Al Mashi Yismechu. In contrast to the Reisha, the Sefer lists an entire list of halachos, areas in halacha where there's tremendous amount of Torah Shebechsav. I mean, for example, Tumah V'Tara is almost half of, if not more than half of Sefer Vayikra. And so too Karbanos. That's the other half of Sefer Vayikra. And Arayos, we have almost two full parshios that delineate the Isurei Arayos. So that's Yesh Lem Al Mashi Yismechu V'Arei Hein Gufei Torah. And there we'll see most of the halacha in the Torah itself. And again, we'll have to darshan the Torah with the various midos shatorah nidreshes b'hem, but we don't need a remez muat, some sort of slight kischut hasira mention in Torah Shebechsav. We have massive amount of Torah Shebechsav. So our Mishnah reflects the opinion which is now going to be rejected by other Tanoim, but the Tan of our Mishnah holds that Hataras Nedarim has very little to rely upon in Torah Shebechsav. But Tanya, we have another opinion which is reflected in the following price. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yesh Lehem Al Mashi Yismach. If you read the parsha carefully, you will find Hataras Chacham in Nidarim in the parsha itself. And of course, the parsha Nidarim is in Parshas Naso, at the beginning of Bamidbar. And it says there, ki afli, twice it says ki afli. Actually, the first ki afli is at the end of Sefer Vayikra. The second is in the 6th chapter of Bamidbar. And there we interpret the extra words of ki afli. It's redundant. Why the second ki afli? So the first ki afli we understand very well. The Targum Onkelos says ki afli means kasher yefarish, which means that he enunciates clearly his neder, and that is a haflas peh. But what's the second ki afli? That seems to be totally unnecessary. So achas hafla leisur, one is to enunciate the neder, and therefore the neder is binding and generates an isur. But the second hafla, achas hafla leheter, just the opposite, to be matir the neder. That's when a person comes in front of a chacham and he enunciates the words, I didn't really want this neder, I can't take the weight of the neder, either Pesach or Charata, and then at that point, the Chacham is matir the neder because he comes to the conclusion that the person who took the neder did not know then what he knows now. So at the moment that he took the neder, he did not anticipate the difficulty that he would face and the impediments that he has to overcome in order to fulfill his neder. So that's the entity called hafla lehet. And according to Rabbi Eliezer, this is something that yesh lehem tzmach min haTorah. Rabbi Yeshua also agrees to Rabbi Eliezer, and Ataras Nidarim can be classified as yesh lehem al masha yismachu, but he has a different parsha in the Torah. In this case, Sefer Tehillim. It's very interesting that these Tanoim are open to the idea of a broader definition of Torah Shabbat, which would include even Tanakh. And David HaMelech says in the chapter number 95 of Tehillim regarding the Dora Midbar that gave such terrible difficulties and rebellions against Moshe Rabbeinu, Asher nishbatim yapi, God is so angry at the people of Israel in the Midbar, im yavon el menuchasi, will they come to the menucha in Eretz Yisrael? In other words, when God was expressing his divine wrath and he decided to take a shvuah, an oath, that he would punish the sins of Bnei Yisrael, they wouldn't enter into the land of Israel. In fact, there were very, very few Jews in the Midbar who actually did enter into the land of Israel. So now we derive the conclusion that God took a shvuah when he was kaviyachol in that state of divine anger, and bi'api nishbati, I took this shvuah in my state of anger, God declares. However, chazarti bi, God changed his mind. And God is now going to be matir his shvuah, and he's going to allow the people of Israel to enter into Eretz Yisrael. And even amongst them, I think the number was 15,000 amongst them that had been part of the Meraglim, meaning that they were alive at the time Meraglim, and yet he was matir his own neder, which is fascinating, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could serve not only on the Bezdin, not only as the Nishba, the one who took the Shvuah, but also on the Bezdin to be matir the Shvuah. And that God wears like two hats, he stands on both sides of the Bezdin. And why did the pasuk go ahead and tell us and reveal to us that nishbati v'chazarti bi, in order to teach us that we too, following and emulating God, we can now apply the same rule of chazarti bi, of being matir a shvuah or a neder. And the emphasis here is on the word bi'api. What does it mean, bi'api? That's the opposite of what we call daito musheves olav. When a person gets very angry, he's not thinking clearly. So Hashem is telling us that the reason why halachically we could remove that shvuah is because of the api, because the mindset that I had at that time when I actually took the shvuah is not the same as what I have today. And that's what we call a Pesach. Rabbi Yitzchak Omer, I also agree with all the Tanoim above, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, fundamentally that Hataras Nedarim Nechal Mal Lismoch, but I have a different parsha. Shenemar, and now we're talking about Parshas Truma, and the people of Israel are coming forward to contribute to the building of the Mishkan. And the pasuk says, "Kol nediv libo yivienu el es trumas Hashem," and we're going to derive from the pasuk "Kol nediv libo," which literally translates as "He whose heart prompts him." That if a person took a neder to contribute something to the Melechas HaMishkan, he's got to fulfill his neder, but only if that condition of nedivas halev is applicable, meaning that he really wants to bring. His heart genuinely prompts him, and he's very excited about the opportunity to contribute. But if he changes his mind, and through charata, he is no longer categorized as kol nediv libo, then the neder that he took, the original pledge, is no longer binding. And therefore we see once again that with charata, you could remove the validity, undermine, and void the neder. Chananya ben Achi, Rabbi Yoshua Omer. So this is the nephew of Rabbi Yoshua. His name is Chananya. He's going to derive Hataras Nedarim from a different parsha in Sefer Tehillim. Yesh lem al mashe yismechu shenemar nishbati v'kaimo lishmar mishpatei tzidkecha. Which, by the way, the Gemara quotes in Masechet Nedarim on Daf Ches to teach us that you're allowed to take a shvuah to be mizaris yourself to fulfill a mitzvah. So David HaMelech says, whoa. Okay, we're in the dark here. And you don't hear me or see me, right? Yeah.